everyone. This is Shay Dotson with Therap Services. I certainly hope that you all are having a great day today. I am joined by my colleague Jason Laws, and we will be having this webinar today just focusing on how to create outcome measure types that will help you measure your organizational progress. So we're super excited to continue in our series and sort of taking a deep dive into business intelligence and specifically into data-driven outcomes and how it can help your organization. So we are right at the 2 o'clock hour, and definitely want to make sure that we are honoring your time. As we know, everybody is pretty busy with things, and we want to make sure that you're participating in a webinar that will honor your time and give you some value for what you're working on. So I will be your trainer facilitator today, and Jason will be um, helping me with any sort of questions and questions that people may be posing. Just a matter of sort of housekeeping. Right now, everybody is in listen-only mode, so your audio has been muted. We'll have an opportunity at the end of the call where I will unmute everyone. You'll have an opportunity to sort of just give some feedback or ask any questions. As I am going through the presentation, please feel free to click on the lower right-hand corner of your GoToMeeting tab, the menu that says chat. You can feel free to chat in that area, ask any questions, and we certainly will respond. Okay? So just know that there will be a question and answer opportunity at the end of this particular webinar. So just a little bit about me as your speaker. I have been working with Therap since 2014. I've served in the field of intellectual and developmental disabilities since the early 2000s. Um, I am, in addition to working for Therap as a state team member and a data-driven outcome specialist, I am also a certified person-centered thinking trainer and serve on the board of directors for the Learning Community for Person-Centered Practices. I absolutely love what I do, and all of those things and those experiences that I have come to Therap with absolutely make me passionate about data-driven outcomes and what DDO has the ability to do for your organization. And so certainly that is the heart of what we are going to discuss today in our time together. Jason is also on the call with me, and Jason serves as one of our core significant business developments for the Southeast region, but he is also our product development lead for business intelligence in many different areas, but he also is leading the charge for data-driven outcomes. So again, Jason is on the line today. Even though you don't see his picture, he is on the line with us and certainly will be answering questions as needed. So wanted to just go ahead and launch right into our discussion today. I know that DDO has been out for approximately a year this month, and some people may be very familiar with it, but I also want to take an opportunity for those people who may not be as familiar to definitely explain what DDO is. And so we call it DDO for short, but the name is Data-Driven Outcomes. And data-driven outcomes, I like to think about it in terms of performance measures. So data-driven outcomes are performance measures that serve as benchmarks for organizational performance. So there are things that, as an organization, we are reaching towards certain marks that say we're excelling or areas that we need to improve in. And having data-driven outcomes as a module within your organization will help you sort of look back at your own organizational performance and mark those areas that need to improve or give that data that shows proof of the great work that you're doing. DDO, as we call it for short, The module supports agencies to customize the various domains and categories of information that you may want to track in order to measure different areas of performance. In addition to that, because the information is taken from your ISP program, so when your staff are collecting that ISP data, DDO helps you to be able to gather that data and look at it on a larger level. So you're supporting individuals towards certain goals to achieve certain things in their lives. And having DDO allows you to apply that to certain benchmarks or categories or standards that allow you to look at that data in a different lens and see this is how this individual is performing on an individual level, and we're looking at the uniqueness of the data that comes in for that person, but also at an organizational level, how are we supporting them? How effective is the support that we are providing to individuals in helping them to achieve the lives that they desire? And so the goal of this call today is to sort of dive into looking at the process of coming up with those categories or domains, because oftentimes when agencies first begin the implementation process, this is where they struggle. This is where lots of conversation and discussion happens to sort of figure out what is it exactly that we are looking at? What is it exactly that we need to track? How can we use this within our organization? And so the goal of the call today is to get into that conversation and just give some examples of where you can pull that information from and how you would develop those particular outcome measure types in our system. So there are many different places that you can use, or many different sources within your own organization that you can use to develop domains. And so the first place that I sort of want to take a look is those internal standards. Those internal standards could be something as simple as we want to develop an outcome measure type that will track the goal progress for individuals. So across our organization, across all the programs, we will make ISP programs eligible for DDO, and we want to do a very general, generic outcome measure type that says this is the progress that individuals are making. Or it could be something like drills. Maybe you're supporting individuals to work on their responses in emergency situations. You want to see how individuals are responding or what level of support maybe they're needing to um, respond to tornadoes, or respond to fire drills, or respond to any sort of emergency evacuation situation as you prepare and support them to develop that life skill. Maybe you want to see how people are performing overall, and as an organization, how well are your staff doing in terms of helping them with that. Another area may be your vision or mission of the organization. So as an organization, there are certain things that we say about who we are and what we want to do for the people who are receiving the supports that we offer. Um, and that may be a source or a place that you say, we want to track or create an outcome measure type to track our own internal performance to see if we're truly living up to what we say we want to do and who we say we are. And in just a moment, I'm going to actually go through an example of how you would pull that information from your vision or your mission statement. There may be organizational strategies that have been developed, strategic goals that you're working towards year to year, or maybe you've developed a 5-year strategic plan. And now you want to have data that backs up the efforts that you're making to go towards those particular strategic goals. There may be board directives that have been given. Um, your board of directors has had a meeting and said, this is the direction that we think makes the most sense for the organization. And so there are certain goals or directives that they have set forth that you then need to be able to come back as a quality assurance department and say, we have proof based on our supports and services that we're meeting these particular goals. And so I want to take an opportunity to just show you a few examples of how you can use this information and pull it into an outcome measure type. So let's take a look at a vision mission statement. Okay, so this is just an example that has been taken. And so let's say that this is Lovely Life Center. And Lovely Life Center is committed to providing person-centered services and supports for people living with developmental disabilities. The goal of these services and supports is to promote independence, community involvement, and quality of life. And so if I were working for Lovely Life Center, my eyes would immediately focus in on those last four words: independence, community involvement, and quality of life. And I would say, as an organization, we are saying that these are the things that we're promoting, and we can take those particular four categories and look back at the data that we are collecting. I apologize, those three categories. We can look back at the data that we're collecting and see how does that information match up to the things that we say we want to promote through our supports and services. And so I'm going to switch over to logging into the system and show you what that would look like in your data-driven outcomes section, okay? So I am going from the standpoint that you've already got your data-driven outcome permissions turned on. And when you do that, what that will allow you to do is to have data-driven outcomes at the bottom of your screen, and it will allow you to create a new one, okay? So I click on new. I would come in and maybe I would say that this is, I might put the acronym as mission, okay? And this is mission statement outcomes, okay? In this section, okay, I may want to define exactly what those categories mean, so that anybody who is coming in to look at that information will know exactly what it is that I mean. So the categories that I'm choosing that I want to track are independence, community involvement, okay, and quality of life. So in my mind, I may be very sure on what that means, but I may want to leave some notes behind with a really good definition that gives people an idea of what sort of data should be collected that represents independence. So I'm just going to put a note in here for you guys to just be sure that you define that information so that people have specific examples. Okay. So again, you guys will create those definitions so that people are really clear on what they're looking for. So based on this, I've said that these are my three domains or categories of information that I want to track across my organization. And so I would come in here and say, I need to add some more domains. You have up to 25 different categories that you can create. I only want to do 3. And so I put it to the number 3 and click on Add Task Domains. And I could come here and put in those different things. All right, so those would be my 3 domains or categories. I sort of like to call it my buckets. These are the buckets of information that I want to collect to see how well is my organization doing towards these performance measures based on our mission statement. And so now at the bottom, what I need to decide is, okay, this is the categories of information. These are the categories of information that I'm collecting. But when I am going in and I'm going to map over this information, what sort of value am I looking to apply to the scoring method? So if I am looking, just sign in really quick. If I am looking at what my staff are going to be doing, because nothing about their process of collecting information is going to change. All right, so if staff are in and they are working on a particular goal for an individual, when they go in and they're looking at that information, they are going to see a certain scoring method. So when they come into this drop-down menu, nothing for them is going to change. But when I am creating my outcome measure type and I'm saying that I want to track information based on community involvement, based on people being independent, based on quality of life, I'm going to have to assign a value to these particular scores that are in this drop-down menu so that it creates a common language, right? And so those particular scores or value are going to be called score labels here. And so I could either go with what is defaulted within the Therap system and say that I want those values to either equal positive, negative, or neutral, or I could decide that I want more variety or I want to change it. And so if I want to change it, maybe for me, for these particular things, I just want to know that the outcome is present. So if that is the case, I could come in and say outcome present, partially present, or not present, depending on what I'm looking for. Okay. If I needed more options, maybe I want something in here that is neutral because maybe I'm going to have something within my scoring method. If I'm looking back at this, maybe there's something within this scoring method that is not going to fit within that particular outcome present, not present, or partially present. And I want something that's neutral. So if that's the case, then I could make sure that I put something in here and add an additional score label that just says neutral, not applicable, whatever it is that you want to be a part of that scoring method, okay? And so if I am satisfied with how this is put together, I like what this is showing, then I would come to the bottom and hit approve, and then that is ready to be mapped. If there's something else that I need to go back and define further, make a little bit better, then I can just simply create this as a draft and click save, and my team and I can have some time to discuss and come back to it. But as I create that, this is now building a library that I have within the system on different outcome measure types, okay? All right, so Looking to see if there's any questions at this point.
Yeah, I'll jump in real fast, Shay. There was one question about requesting if we had some sample scores and score labels, just to help folks kind of conceptualize what this can look like. And yes, in fact, we do. That's something that both Shay and Fayon Johnson, who I think you guys, many of you know as our other DDO specialists, we do have and we use when working with new organizations getting up and going with DDO, and they would be happy to share that with you. So please don't hesitate to reach out to Shay or Fayon, and they can share that doc.
Absolutely. And as we go on in the presentation, I'm actually going to show you some of those scores that we have as examples, or some of those outcome measure types. And as Jason said, we're happy to share. So just going back to the presentation for just a moment. The next thing that I wanted to talk with you guys about or share with you is that sometimes organizations may have guiding principles that they're working from, okay? And those guiding principles or the organizational values might be the very things that become your outcome measure types. And so in this particular example, the guiding principles are providing person-centered supports that increase independent decision-making capabilities, inclusion in community life, daily living, educational, and work-related skills. And so in the same way, if I wanted to take those, I could make those into domains that are coming from the guiding principles. So again, I could just go into the account and create that particular outcome measure type and add to that list. So this one might be called principles. Well, maybe we'll call it guiding principles. Okay, and so I might come in and put in decision making. I might say community involvement, daily life skills, let's look back at that really quick. Educational, and maybe I want to put in their employment skills. And so if those are all the ones that I need, I don't need anything different. Maybe I don't need as many. I can just change it back to 5. And that will allow that to be. And again, I would come in and make a decision about what I want those score labels to be. So this might be skill present. Or however you decide that that value should be, okay? Whatever makes sense for you and your organization, you would then put that in there. So those are examples of sort of internal things that may make sense for you to create in your library of outcome measure types within your organization. We have some other examples in here that I'll show you on our spreadsheet that are internal standards. Again, so if you're looking for behavioral interventions and you maybe want to track that information, maybe you're looking at the particular domains are aggression, self-interest behavior, and psychiatric. You want to know, are people using the interventions that are the most effective? And so your score label may be encourage, discourage, and neutral, because you want to see if staff are using those particular outcome measure types, or I'm sorry, not outcome measure types, but are they using the interventions that make the most sense in terms of what you're teaching them about how they should be supporting individuals? And so you would be able to track that information within your system and produce some reporting from that. And so if we go into agency reports, just so that you're able to see sort of how those things come about, what they look like, and that's taking a minute to load. I'll show you some other examples. Maybe you're looking at drills, and you want to see the individual performance, as I suggested before. You would be able to do fire safety response, tornado safety, emergency safety, and then you'd be able to maybe judge it by are the supports that we're providing helping people to have a positive response, a negative response, a neutral response? Are we helping them to improve in what we're doing? Okay. Some general outcome measures might be community inclusion, employment, skill development. These are broader ones that you can use. Relationships, choice, decision making, and health. And so maybe you want to put on there the score value of outcome demonstrated, partially demonstrated, or not demonstrated. So all of these ones are particular examples of things that can be used. Maybe you're looking at employment activities and you want to be able to know whether or not, or track whether or not, this person is having sort of meaningful activities during their day and what sort of roles they're taking on within these particular employment opportunities. So maybe the activity is that they're doing paid employment versus volunteering, a desired social activity or desired independent activity. And so you can track whether the activity was completed independently with support or not support, depending on what you want to see, okay? A lot of the times, community inclusion is very popular, something that we're all working towards. And so you may want to look and see from the lens of, are we working towards social connectedness and relationships for individuals? Again, are they participating in meaningful activities? Do they have resources and settings that facilitate inclusion? And so maybe based on the data that you're collecting in your ISP programs, you're able to capture or see that information. And then your scoring label is that the outcome was fully present, partially present, or not present, okay? Just some other ones down here. For the two different versions of basically the assessment. One is the presence of these outcomes for those particular categories. Again, is that outcome present or not present? Whereas the second one is saying, all right, what sort of support was provided? Was it paid supports? Was it natural or unpaid supports and support not provided? So a variety of things that you can look at internally that may help you with things that you're tracking for your organization. So let's go back to the dashboard for business intelligence and sort of look at some of how the things show up in reporting. So I'm going to go in and sort of change my dates back. And I want to come in and look at, we'll look at drills. And I'm going to apply. And so I'm able to come in and look at, from a programmatic standpoint, how are the programs responding, or are they helping people towards those particular drills? I can also drill down into the information here and look at how that particular program within my organization is performing, or the individuals within that particular program, what are their particular scores. I also have the ability, so if I want to go back to that page, I can just click in the lower left-hand corner. And maybe I want to look at it from the individual framework. Also know that you have the ability to change how you're viewing this. So if you wanted to see it in a stacked bar, a pie chart, whatever makes the most sense for how you're looking at that data, you definitely have the ability to do so. But maybe I want to look at it from the standpoint of the framework itself. Come in and change my dates again. So now I can look at, all right, how's the performance for each one of those particular responses, okay? So that's just the first look at some data. We're gonna go in and look at some other things as well. All right. I'll come back to those questions. So now let's look at it from the standpoint of, let's say that you have some organizational goals. Again, as you look through that information, there may be certain things that pop out. So these particular examples were maybe the board has given a particular goals that they want the agency to work towards, and these particular things are that each of the people supported will lead the lives of their own choosing, be free from poverty, that they're going to be employed, they reside in a community, and they live independently. And so maybe as an organization, the three things that you say from there that you're going to focus on for this year and that you want to track through outcome measure types are, again, choice for individuals, employment, and independence. And so you may develop an outcome measure type from that. This particular second goal was related to people participating in civic activities. So do people have opportunities to vote or to be educated about candidates and things of that nature? Volunteerism, community service, religion, art, culture, recreation, alongside their peers that are with or without disabilities. So you might decide that you want to capture those particular categories. And as in the example before, you may decide that, hey, I want to look at it from the standpoint of what role did the person take on. So this is an example of um, a relationships or social roles outcome measure type, where you're looking at the different categories of friend, family, romantic partner, and was the role present or not present. In that particular example, you may want to change that around to say, all right, those particular categories that we were looking at, did this person have the support or participate or experience that with paid support, without paid support, with a family, a friend, or however you want to categorize that. So you can certainly have some variety in what you're doing and how you're developing those outcome measure types. So I'm going to just pause for a moment and look at particular questions. All right, so this question says, would you please explain again how Therap translates the ISP score into values assigned to each outcome? Sure, I definitely will do that, Donna. Okay. All right. So let's go into an actual mapping opportunity, because that's going to answer that question of how you assign the values. And so let's say that I am coming in, and I like to pick on Maria in this account. So let's say that I am working within this account and I am going to map over some data, okay? This is why it's important to sort of look through your ISP programs and make a decision about the scoring methods and how they will be mapped over in the system. So let's see. Let's go for here. Actually. All right, so I'm going to choose Annie Oakley, her cooking skill, and let's say that I want to map that over to skill development. Okay. When I come in to do my mapping based on the outcome measure type that I created, first and foremost at the top, I'm going to look at the task, and I want to make a decision about what category or what domain does this particular task give data to, right? So maybe this is going to be independent living, okay? Same here, I might decide independent living is basically what all of these are going to do for this particular cooking skill. I might decide that it's several based on what I'm tracking, and I certainly can do that. If there are tasks within here that I don't think the data will match up with anything, and I don't have to necessarily map them over, okay? Here's where assigning that score value is pretty important. So depending on what we decided as a team, so in this particular one, the score values or the labels that we're going to assign are equal to increase, maintaining, or decrease. And so we would look at this and say, based on what we know about this individual or based on this particular goal, if they're doing it independently, that means that they're increasing. Maybe we would say physical assistance, maybe because I know that this person is has a skill set that doesn't require independence, and so maybe for them, if they required physical assistance, that would mean that there was a decrease in skill. Whereas verbal prompt to physical assist and verbal prompt might be maintaining, right? So I might decide that that's the label that they have. In this particular one at the bottom, I don't have anything within my particular scoring method or score label, I should say, right now that equates to something that's neutral. And so if this were a reportable score, meaning that it did not have this non-reportable, I would be sort of stuck trying to think about how am I going to make this fit within these particular three things that I have. But because this is a non-reportable score, I am not required to map it to any of those particular score labels. So that's the beauty of that non-reportable, is that it doesn't have to be attached to anything. Donna, did that answer that question correctly? Was that helpful? I hope so. All right.
Shay, there was a quick question about the ability to map over the ISP programs to multiple outcome domains, and I answered it on the questionnaire panel, but that might be something good to emphasize with the group as well.
Absolutely. That is absolutely the beauty of outcome measure types and having multiple ones, is that I can have one piece of data, one ISP program, right, that I think fits multiple things. So maybe for that cooking goal that I just mapped over, maybe I also think that it should be mapped to another particular outcome measure type. And so I could go in, let me just go to Maria's. Maybe for Maria's cooking goal here, I might decide that I want to map it to choice. And so I could come in and decide that I want to map this to choice. And once I map it and approve it, then I can go back again after I've done that, and maybe that same goal is going to be mapped towards um, community, right? Because maybe she's learning these particular skills in the community. And so I can then map it to that. So you do have the ability to map one ISP program to multiple outcome measure types. Cool. We good on that, Jason?
Yep. Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm going to go into showing some examples and on the national side of sort of some things that you could use um, as places or sources for um, your outcome measure types. And so some of those things might come from national standards, such as the CMS final rule for person-centered planning or home and community-based services, national core indicators. Many of you are probably familiar with or using CQL for the personal outcome measures, and you may be using the 5 factors, or you may be using um, just all 21. Some of you may be accredited through CARF and maybe have a CARF review coming up in the next year or so. And so if you receive their manual and you sort of know the standards or the categories that you are going to be receiving your accreditation, you could then say, hey, let's go ahead in advance and create an outcome measure type based on those standards that we're going to receive certification on, so that we can show that we're already working in those particular areas. Some of you may be very familiar with charting the life course, and those life domains may be something that you want to look at your data and see how well you're doing across your organization in supporting people in each of those areas. Or if you are familiar with Delmarva and you've ever gone through a quality review for them, there are certain person-centered reviews and categories that they do. And you might want to, again, in advance, be able to show that you're already meeting those standards through an outcome measure type. So just looking at the CMS final rule and looking at some of the things that they are requiring in the person-centered documentation, they're looking for things that reflect what is important to a person, right? And the service delivery, their personal preferences, health and welfare. So I might decide that I want to create a outcome measure type that speaks to those particular things that CMS is looking for. I might be wanting to show that the goals include choice and desired outcomes, or community involvement, or any of those particular things, that they're, again, supported to interact or have opportunities to be with people that are um, in what we call natural supports, or just people we normally would hang out with in our community, or having a volunteer opportunity. And so from that, if that's what I want to do, there's an example of one for a project that I'm working on that I think is a really great example of how you can do something that sort of complies with the CMS final rule, and definitely sort of paying attention to what's important to individuals. And so in this particular list, this organization wanted to drill down to outcomes that represented things that were important to individuals. So those things that make them feel happy, satisfied, fulfilled, achieving their goals, their personal hopes, dreams, and outcomes. And then those things that are important for, so those health and safety needs, or those skill sets that people need to learn. And so as a result, they created this particular outcome measure type that was really, really specific and drilled down and gave great definition. So the categories were choice, social connectedness and relationships, meaningful activities, safety, health and well-being, person-centered practices. Okay, and they did a really great job of sort of really saying, what is it that we're looking for when we're asking for this sort of data to be mapped, so that people would be very clear on what sort of data they should connect, right? And they broke this up into 2 different outcome measure types, one that was specifically for important to and important for, because there are times where a goal or things that people are working on in their life might represent both sides. It might be important to me to develop swimming skills because my dream is to go to Hawaii and to be able to do surfing or to get into water sports. It might also be important for me because maybe that swimming is related to me increasing my health or losing weight or just my overall safety of not um, having any accidents or drowning in any particular water activities. And so that goal may be something that is related on both sides. And so this also drilled down into what do those score labels mean? What does it mean that a person achieved something important to or important for? What does it mean for in progress or not achieved? And so that's how that particular one was set up, and I think is a great example of how you can take those particular categories that are mentioned within the CMS final rule, those things that they're looking for, and be able to put it in an outcome measure type and then have some results from that. So let me switch over to some reporting. And while that's building, I'll show you just some examples of different things, and I'll come back to. But national core indicators is a great national standard that you may decide that you want to use. And national core indicators has several different ways that you can look at that information. So there's several different indicators here. That you may come from their particular website and just say, hey, I kind of like those overall categories, and maybe so you want to put it into one. Or you might decide I want to sort of delve into the specific category on health, welfare, and rights. And so maybe these become your domains or your buckets of information that you're collecting, and you could put that into an outcome measure type. Or individual outcomes, you might decide these are the particular categories that I want to track within my organization, and you would put that into an outcome measure type. And so what that sort of looks like is this. Maybe for the National Core Indicators Health, I want to be able to track medications, and I want to ensure that we're looking at data that supports that it's managed effectively and properly. Wellness is supporting to maintain healthy habits. Restraints makes limited use of restraints. Rights and respect, safety, and health. And I just want to know, are the indicators present or not present? For choice and decision making, I want to be able to maybe track whether or not people are choosing their daily schedule, where they're spending their money, where they work, where they live. Are they choosing who are their managers, coordinators, or staff? And again, I just want to be able to say that those outcomes are present. For a Delmarva person-centered review, maybe I want to be able to see the areas of whole health, safety, rights, choice, person-centered practices, and community. Um, Charting the life course, if we're looking at those life domains, maybe I want to see daily life and employment, community life, safety and security, healthy living, social and spirituality, that they're building relationships, faith and community, and citizenship and advocacy. So as you can see, there's many different ways that you can actually pull in this information and create it within our system. So let's go over and see if our reporting has pulled up, and it has. So I'm going to go in again and sort of adjust my dates there. And I want to look at it from the framework. So you can sort of see how you can drill down into the specific domain names if you wanted to. I want to look at this, the important to and important for, and I want to apply. And so I can look at my specific domains and see how well the organization is performing based on how are we helping people to achieve what's important to them versus what's in progress versus what's not achieved. Okay. And so if I wanted to, again, drill down into this particular one, it's going to say, do you want to see it at the individual level or the program level access? I can do that. One of the things that I think is particularly helpful is to be able to look at your service providers, meaning the staff who are providing those supports, because what that is going to sort of indicate or help you to know is whether or not the training that you're providing to your staff is effective, right? Do they really understand how to support individuals to achieve their goals and to get out of life what they desire? So you can go in and look at the data that's in there. And right off the bat, you can see that Shay Dotson girl. Ooh, we don't know about her. She might need some help or some retraining based on her scores and how she's supporting people. You know, she might need a little bit more help in understanding exactly what it is that she needs to be doing in supporting people. And over here where they're linked, you certainly could drill down into clicking on Shay's name to see exactly who she's working with, right? So who are the people that she's supporting, and have some conversation about that. And this actually could be something as you're tracking this to see your performance. You also could maybe start including that as a part of your performance reviews in helping staff achieve different goals and grow in their own way within your organization. So that is an example of that framework. Let me look at another. So I have my CQL up in here. Let me flip over to a different account and help you to look at some frameworks for.
Shay, as you're in the process of switching over, yeah, there you go, drills. I know that we had a question about ISP programs and mapping those over to drills to kind of see adherence to fire safety, that kind of stuff. And if you had an example of those, I think it would be useful as well.
Sure. Okay. So I'm going to show you this really quick and then I'll switch into that. So let's say that I was working with the CQL 5 factors. If I had those particular domains out there, then I could, again, have a shot of is the outcome present or not present based on those scores that are coming in. So you have the ability to look at that information. Again, if you needed to drill down into that, you could. All right. Let's get to the question about the example of drills, right? That was what we were looking at.
Yeah, it was drills. And specifically, I think it may be worth looking if you have any examples of actual ISP programs as well, so you can kind of see how that might get mapped over from the beginning.
Okay. So let me find. Let me come back and look at. I think this is. Sorry, I'm trying to remember who has drills on their. There we go. All right. So that's behavior. Hold on for just a moment. Let me. Yeah. All right. So here's an example of a drill ISP program that was used. Okay. Because some organizations like to track within their system how people are supported and what they're doing in terms of building those skills. So this one was based on fire drills, emergency, and then tornado. Okay. And as you can see here, the scoring method that was put together was did not occur, observed, and that was non-reportable. Fire drill evacuated within 3 minutes, evacuated more than 3 minutes, did not evacuate, responded to alarm lights, did not respond, followed directives, did not follow directives. Okay. And so if you create this within the system, basically staff would just go in and score that particular information based on how the individual responded. And so let's say, just double check and make sure I believe that it is. So we can see right here, based on when I went into the dynamic data, that this is participating in DDO. And so I'll show you what that sort of mapping turned out to be. So on the outcome measure types, mapping for Royce. And I wanted to come in and I mapped this towards those drills. So this is already mapped for him, but this is basically based on what it was, the categories were chosen. Okay. And then down here at the bottom, because this was a non-reportable, they assigned that to neutral, whereas the evacuated within 3 minutes was positive. Okay. And so you would just assign those values based on what makes sense. If the goal is to get people to evacuate, which we know within 3 minutes or less, and it take more than 3 minutes, then we know that our support is sort of negative, or it's not necessarily working towards what we wanted to do. So that's an example of how you would use that particular thing for drills. Were there other examples that people were looking for, Jason?
I don't think there were any other specific examples. There were a few other questions that came in. There was actually just the last question, and I put a pretty wordy answer in here, so I figure I'll try to answer it verbally as well. There was a question about us preloading particular frameworks into the system, things like NCI or CMS. Some of you guys may have a similar question about CQL, that kind of stuff. And while I certainly understand the value of something like that, with us, we don't want to be in a position of kind of preloading their intellectual property into our system. Certainly there's nothing to prevent you guys from using it to assess your own services, and we'd love for you to do that. That's a big part of what DDO is designed to do. But we don't want it to seem as though we're incorporating their stuff directly into our tool. And so that's why we tend to err on the side of caution when it comes to preloading things. There are a couple of preloads in DDO that are just some very generic things that we created more or less as examples than anything else, so that folks can learn how to use it. Now, that being said, though, if you have a particular outcome measure type and you're trying to figure out how to best structure it in there, we are happy to have conversations with you, Shay and Fayon and myself, about how to kind of get that to fit into the DDO model of collection. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and we can do some direct consultation around that.
Absolutely.
Let's see, there were others. There was a question, I think, about, a question about writing a lot of goals into a single ISP program, which we know a lot of folks do, largely for billing purposes with the way that billing is structured in Therap, and as well as for other reasons. And there was questions about how, about whether or not individualized tasks within an ISP program can be mapped to different outcome measure types and how that might work. And you can certainly map over a task to as many different outcome measures as you want. You also are not required to map every task within an ISP program. So if you have an ISP program with 6 tasks, but only 2 of them do you feel fit neatly into one of your DDO outcome measure types, you only can have to require, or excuse me, you can only map those 2. You don't have to do them all. Next question from Ian. If the score is non-reportable, do you have to assign or select a score for that specific task? No, we actually agonized over what to do with that for a while, Ian, so it's a great question. We didn't want folks to be obligated to map over a non-reportable score, That being said, we did consider that there would be situations when you might want that non-reportable score to be indicative of a particular score label. So what we have done is set it up so that you can map a non-reportable score, but it is not required. Any reportable score is required. So that's how we address that.
Right.
Let's see. Question from Karen. Are there reports that can show aggregated results, e.g. compliance with each domain that is mapped, results for a group of clients or who are in a specific program? Yes and yes to your examples. Compliance with each domain that is mapped, as I think Shay has up on the screen right now, you can drill down into the particular domains to see the scores there. And then if you click on one of those like Shay is doing now, it will ask you if you want to see that at an individual level or a program level. If you're within a multi-provider organization working out of an oversight account, you can look at that at the individual provider level as well.
Was that helpful? What other questions do we have come in? Can the reports be downloaded to Excel? You have the ability to come in and export this into various formats. So PDF, Excel, PowerPoint, Web Archive, or data. Okay. And if you do data, it's going to ask you which format that you want that information in. So yes, you have the ability to export it to Excel.
Question from Linda about it'd be great to link the data from DDO into reports within the Therap application so that it can become officially part of the individual's record. I think it's a good point. You're absolutely right. Right now, the way that BI works, it kind of works off of a separate database than the primary application. They kind of work in parallel, so it's not directly related. But one option that you have, just like Shay just showed, you do have the ability to export to a PDF. And if you're using Therap's document storage module, you would certainly have a place where you could store that associated directly with the individual. So there are mechanisms to get that data in there, but I certainly understand your point about the direct link and the potential value of that.
All right, other things coming in? Awesome. So we are a little past our 3 o'clock time. I certainly appreciate all of your participation and your attention. I hope that you found the information that we shared today very helpful in your process. If you are already in your implementation process, I certainly hope that this helps you to go further. If you've not yet begun, we are looking for you to get on board. So reach out to us so that we can help you get where you need to be. All right. If no other questions, we'll end it for today. We will certainly review what we have discussed today and try to get it posted as soon as possible.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Shay.
Thank you. Have a great one.